So this moves us on to section F. So as I say, we're looking at B. We'll come back to that briefly when we get to looking at examples of using the thread. B is the need, E is the outcome, and F is the provision that is addressing the need, and it will enable those outcomes to be met. So section F, the special educational provision required by law. So as we said right at the beginning in our previous presentation, sections, if you ever get into dispute with the local authority, section B and section F, as well as section I, which is about placement, are the sections that you can go to tribunal with if you are in dispute. So the need is about, that is down to the professionals to identify. You are the best expert on your child, so you do have to self-advocate, make sure that you write A to be highlighting those needs that need investigating, and when you're putting in for your statutory assessment, we spoke about that previously. But section F is where you need to ensure that the reports have the rigour that they are required to have to make sure your plan is written properly. So if we go to the next slide a moment, please, Ellen. Thank you. So let's just look at what is provision again. Provision, that special educational provision means provision that is additional to or different from provision made generally for others of the same age in a mainstream school or institution. If they're under 2, it means educational provision of any kind. Once they're over 2, it's different to that of other children in a mainstream school or setting. So next slide, please, Ellen. So section F basically should mirror what's in section B. If you've got a need, there must be provision to address that need. It should be described in a way that leaves absolutely zero room for argument or for doubt. So provision must be specified, i.e. what support is going to be provided, quantified, the frequency of the support. Is it going to be daily, weekly, monthly, termly, or yearly? Okay, not that James will receive contact from a speech and language therapist. That's not quantified. Okay, it's not specified. It's just saying they're getting contact. It's not saying what they're doing. So detailed by whom? Who's going to be responsible for delivering the provision? And as I say, appropriate for every need identified in section B. Healthcare or social care provision which educates or trains a child can also be treated as special educational provision. So, as I say, provision should be matching cognition and learning, communication and interaction, social, emotional and mental health, and sensory and physical needs. So, for example, if it's something related to your child's communication needs, it should specify whether there's an input needed from a speech and language therapist. Yeah. It's essential that it's detailed because once finalised, the local authority has a legal duty to actually provide the named provision. So while it's in draft, continue to argue. Once it's finalised, what's in there, they have to provide. But if you haven't got it detailed properly, it can become almost a useless document. And we'll look at those terms that they should be using. We talked about it earlier, I think must and should. Health, and we talked about, I touched briefly there about health and social care. That's an example. If habilitation training is required in your is going to help your child in their education and training, then that can be put into this section and can be drawn across into sections B and F. So to bind the plan together. Let's look at that in more detail. Section, can we go to the next slide, please, Ellen? So speaking on describing F, what provision is, because it's important. This is what tribunals are sometimes all about. Section F may include details of the need for specialist teaching, in which case, who is that? By what type of teacher? How frequently will they be coming in? With your child, it may well be a QTVI, so qualified teacher of the visually impaired. It may describe them though as an assistive technology specialist as part of the sensory needs team. You want to know what that person is doing, what their job role are, what are their qualifications and experience of the people that are working with your child, or other professionals with working with your child or young person. Things like that are quite key, because if your child is using assistive technology, using screen readers or braille displays, or needs tactile resources made, or somebody in class assistant, depending on the complexity of their special educational needs, you may need somebody with that expertise who can support them. And that can make the difference if it's worded and it's been recommended in a plan as to what type of educational setting your child might go to, particularly if you're looking for a particular placement. We're not talking necessarily just about specialist independent settings or specialist schools. There are a lot of mainstream schools out there who actually do have fantastic support for children with a vision impairment, but because they've got that experience of working with a child with vision impairment, that's key. You want to, you know, if your child is quite complex, you want to know they're going to a school who's got a lot of experience of working with children with very similar needs to your child to make that transition the best it can possibly be. Again, section F may include details of the need for one-to-one support. If so, again, by whom? How many hours per week should be detailed in a plan? It's just saying they will receive one-to-one support. That might be, well, do they get that for half an hour a day? Or do they need X number of hours a day? And what will they be doing? So this is where you drill down onto the detail. So where are we? Next slide, please. So again, examples of detail you might look for or seek in reports. It may include details of class size requirements. We often do get just written in, they require a small class, but that would be challenged. You know, well, how long is a piece of string? What is a small class? In one school, a small class might be 28 children. You might be thinking a small class means I've got 6 children in a class or 4 children in a class. So you need to know if that's being specified exactly what that means. The need for input from other professionals such as speech and language therapists. Again, you need to be looking at the nature of direct and indirect support and its frequency. Professionals such as speech and language professionals, they will sometimes come and see your child just once a year, and that's perfectly fine because they're giving a scheme of work and they are working with, they are training TAs to then carry out and practice those skills that they've explained and demonstrated that your child might need. So look for what is actually written into these specialist reports. If you're unsure, go back to your planning officer and ask for clarification. Or if you think there's information missing, don't be frightened to go back and say, well, actually, we know, you know, this plan needs to be quantified. It needs specificity. It seems to be missing. I need you to go back to the professionals. Can you go back to me and ask? Let them be the intermediary. Again, in section F, if there's specific equipment such as IT, assistive technology that they require, it needs to be stated in the plan. Sometimes you'll get generic, and that is understandable. You will often get that with in reports from QTVIs where they'll say a generic statement about assistive technology, because technology does change, it gets updated. And if it's written into section F and they say your child requires a laptop with JAWS as an example, then it may be something new has come on the market and it's no longer appropriate, and actually something better is out there that they need. So hence there is sometimes a reluctance, but actually I would look for that specificity and that detail, because it is an annual review, and if it can be amended. They don't like to amend and change detail in a plan, except at transition points typically. But if you know that your child is going to be using Braille or are going to need magnification technology, just ask the QTVI and work with the QTVI to make sure that it does describe magnification technology, even if it's not naming a product. So where are we? Got the need any modifications to the application of the national curriculum. So whether that be the way something is being delivered, it might be relating to sort of PE or cooking, or that might be something we do get from time to time where we have it written into a plan where they do have a reduced curriculum. And that's something you often see at secondary school, particularly if your child is following a GCSE pathway, where they're all doing something like 12 different qualifications. That could be too much. So many subjects that we do sometimes find dropping a subject, and you can't drop your key skills, but dropping an additional subject enables your child to achieve better grades in less subjects. And that can be something that would be written into a plan and normally come out from an annual review. Something really important to remember is section F cannot place any duties on the parent to carry out, deliver provision, or other public bodies. We've occasionally had this, Sophie and I, where we've been suddenly named in an education and healthcare plan. We are a charity. We are not allowed to replicate local authority provision. So something to be aware of. If they say, you know, you as the parent will be responsible for your child's mobility and orientation training, yes, you can support it at home, but you can't be provision within a plan. So, oh, losing my voice. Right. Can we go to the next slide, please, Ellen? Right. So with this one, we've given an example of how examples of statements we've just pulled out of what we feel are quite good quality EHCPs that we've across our desks. So I've highlighted in yellow the magic words should, or it should be, the words should and must are the legal terminology. They're the enforceable words. That's what you need to see written in an EHCP. If you look at your child's EHCP right now, hopefully you've got those words included. The words could appear in so many plans that cross our desk. Could is as long as a piece of string, you know. I could be sitting right now in the Bahamas sunning myself, but I feel I should be, but my husband will have to pay for it and I will be going. So this one reads, school staff should follow the advice of the sensory team, including, and then they gave examples. So it's not could, may, all right? May is we see quite a bit, an optional word. They should, or it could be written, they must follow the advice. Should tends to be more popular, but it is a legal word and they have to carry out the following if it's written in that way. So in this instance, examples, provision, so should follow the advice. So support, the child will receive provision of a designated member of staff who can modify and prepare all teaching materials in advance of lessons and is competent in the use of assistive technology. Yeah. So in other words, that staff member has to be trained to use assistive technology, the magnification or the speech technology your child needs. A minimum of 25 hours per week will be allocated for this designated provision. So again, it's quantified to replicate his current support requirements. This should be reviewed within his first term, so it's non-negotiable. It should be reviewed within his first term, as hours may need to be increased to accommodate for the additional subjects and required resources. And a provision of 4 hours in-class support per day from a member of staff who can ensure that James has visual access and who can act as a reader, scribe, practical assistant when required in line with anticipated exam access arrangements to develop a normal way of working. So they're being very explicit about what that staff member will do. And that's what you would like to see in a fit for purpose EHCP. Can we have the next slide, please, Ellen? So, so back to the golden thread. So let me just showing you, we had earlier, James is very popular tonight. So section B, this is how it might flow. We did have that earlier slide actually that Sophie said refer to. There was a lot more written about James's vision impairment and his needs, but so we've just reduced it to this. James has severely reduced distance vision and he currently sees at 6 meters what someone with standard vision sees at 48 meters. And then logmar detail. He's unable to access information presented on flip charts or whiteboards. So it's shown this is how his vision impairment impacts on him. If you go back to that slide, you'll see lots of other things, how his vision impairment impacts on him. An outcome that's relevant by the end of year 9, James to use ICT to its full extent to support ease of access to the curriculum. And next slide, please. Thank you. And then the provision, school staff should follow the advice of the VI team, including specialist technology to read and record his work, including the teacher's computer smartboard must be mirrored or repeated on James's device so that he can see it from his desk. There are a number of ways this can be achieved, including use of Google Classroom, Google Meet, Teams, VNC or Splashtop. Specialist magnification software linked to his specialist technology. So that's showing you he can't see the smartboard, he can't see the whiteboard, he wants to learn independently, he wants to be able to read. By putting this provision in place, he will now be able to see his screen. He'll see the smartboard. It will be on his magnification software on his device in front of me, in front of him. Sorry. So that's showing you that thread, yeah, of how to follow it through. One of the things I always say about this SBEF, how do you actually manage that? A good tip, when you receive the draft plan, I would say put yourself in the role of the teacher marking the homework. You are not, what you can't do as the parent, you can't say, well, I want my child to have X number of hours of support. I want them to have this or that equipment. That is actually the expertise of the professionals who are assessing your child, who are in that position to say, your child needs this provision, your child to address their needs. But you can mark their homework on the reports is the way I'd put it. So if you've got the local authority, the planning officer, case officer, whatever they might be called in your area, they will send you that draft, which, as we've said, you've got 15 days. I find a useful thing is to look at section B. You're going through cognition and learning and physical and sensory and social and emotional, but highlight each statement of need that you see that they've identified and written. You could get lots of different coloured highlighters if you want to, or you could highlight them in one colour and number them. You know, if you want, it depends on how you want to be thorough. But if you're going to mark homework, do it with detail. Then go to section F and think, well, what provision is being put in place to overcome my child's challenge, and then tick it off or highlight it with the corresponding highlighter marker, so you know it's been addressed. But when they write that assessment, when they write that provision statement that's supposed to be addressing your child's needs, i.e., they require input from a SLT, speech and language therapist. If they've written it, they require input. Well, actually, is that being quantified? Did that have detail? Was that specific? Have they said, well, what's the qualification of the person who's supposed to be delivering it? How often, the frequency? If it's not there, then you want to go back to your planning officer. That's what you do on the feedback, and say, well, I'm not happy with we need amendments to this plan. This has not been quantified. Can you go back to the report, talk to the occupational therapist or the QTVI? Hopefully you've got a good working relationship, and you can cut out that middleman on that middle person on that instance. But see whether you can get that report revised, because they have a duty to quantify and specify, give that detail of the support. So like I say, that's my top tip when you're looking at that thread. Look at your B, look at your F, keep in mind your E's about, well, what do I want them to achieve from that? But mark them. Have they done it properly? And have they used must and should? Have they given that quantification?